Okay, in this video we are going to go over why the adult connective tissues are sort of organized the way that they are. And we're also going to talk about where they came from, a little bit more about this embryonic connective tissue called mesenchyme, from which they all originate. So like I told you guys in the last video, this is kind of what mesenchyme looks like. It's this embryonic connective tissue that can, as you see in this table, that can actually make all of the adult connective tissues. And the adult connective tissues are going to be subdivided into the connective tissue proper, which we're going to get into in just a second, the supporting connective tissue, and the fluid connective tissue. Really what they have in common is not what they look like in an adult, but where they came from, which is they are all originated from this mesenchyme. And mesenchyme basically has the ability to make any of these tissues. Now, as an adult, you don't have any mesenchyme tissue left behind, but you do have some mesenchymal cells left behind. And these mesenchymal cells, I don't know if you noticed, but there was one of them in the figure that we looked at last time. Mesenchymal cells persist into adults, and they kind of hang out around your blood vessels. And if this tissue, for instance, got damaged, what you could do is this mesenchymal cell could say, hey, you look like you need a fibroblast. I can make a fibroblast. I can make an adipocyte. I can make I can make any connective tissue cell. So these mesenchymal cells in adulthood are called stem cells, but they're stem cells that are limited to making connective tissue. They can't make cardiac muscle. They can't make neurons. They can't make any of that kind of stuff. So what they're called is multipotent stem cells, meaning they can make many things, not pluripotent stem cells, meaning that they could make everything. So they can't make anything but connective tissues. Okay, so now what we're going to get into is we're going to get into the categories of connective tissues. So starting right here, the connective tissues proper, the supporting connective tissue, and the fluid connective tissue. So let's just talk about these generally. Fluid connective tissue, pretty much the one you're going to learn is blood. Blood is a fluid connective tissue. It doesn't seem like it would be a connective tissue, but it's derived from mesenchyme, so it is. Okay, so it's mostly water in the matrix. The connective tissues proper have less water and more like proteins and solids in the matrix, so they're more squishy. And then the supporting connective tissues are more solid, like cartilage and bone. Hopefully that makes sense. So where we're going to start is these connective tissues proper, but notice it has a further subdivision, loose versus dense. So now let's talk about what we mean by loose versus dense. If you looked at a connective tissue proper, and it has lots of open space between the cells and the fibers, like this tissue does that you're seeing, or this one, or this one, or let's see, this one, or this one. These are all loose connective tissues. Now, look at that and contrast it with the one that I'm about to show you. This one is a dense connective tissue. Do you see that between this cell and this cell, it's so packed with fibers that there's hardly any bright space to speak of? So it's much, much more densely packed with protein fibers, as is this one. Now this one doesn't look quite as dense as the other one, but let's compare it to this one, right? It's much, much denser than that one. So, or this one. So there are loose versus dense, and there's going to be 3 loose and there's going to be 3 dense. Okay, so let's start looking at the loose ones. So the loose connective tissues proper, there are going to be 3 kinds. Let's get back to the first one. Okay, loose versus dense. This first one right here is called areolar or areolar loose. Areolar means space, so it's got a lot of space in it. This is the connective tissue that you really have to know because you can see so many things in it. You can see the ground substance really easily because there's space where there's no fibers and there's no cells. It's not empty space. It's space that has some degree of fluid in it. You can see cells. You can see 2 different kinds of fibers. This tissue is also really, really common. So in order to sort of know what this tissue is like, if you pinch your arm and pull it up, the skin and the muscle are really separated by this tissue that has a little bit of snap back, but also some strength to it. And it has a little bit of snap back because it has these fibers right here, which are elastic fibers, thin, relatively branched, usually really darkly staining. Those are elastic fibers. And it's strong because it's got collagen fibers, lighter staining, much thicker, unbranched. So elastic and collagen fibers. It has a whole bunch of different kinds of cells in it. And at this level of education, you can't quite tell the difference between the cells. So you can call them, either you can sort of fib and call them fibroblasts because there's so many fibers, there must be fibroblasts in there, or you can call them interstitial cells because they're cells that are in their interstitial fluid. So whichever one you want to call them is fine. I think the lab manual calls them fibroblasts. So if you're comfortable with that, that's fine. Just realize it might be a little bit of a fib because you don't actually know, because there's other kinds of cells in there as well. This is really the glue of the human body. If you can't figure out what to put between, for instance, an epithelium and a muscle, it's usually this one, not always, but usually. It's found all over the freaking place. It's found under most of your epithelial tissues. It wraps under the epithelial tissues in your blood vessels. It's between two things as packing material. It's around your nerves. It's around your bladder, between your layers of muscle, your lymphatic system. It's the subcutaneous layer under your skin. Under all of your mucous membranes, you're going to find this one. And you need to be able to recognize it, even if it doesn't stain exactly the same. This is obviously the picture from your textbook, which you're going to be super familiar with. But I generally don't test you or quiz you from the pictures from your textbook. So once you just sort of start getting used to looking at enough of these histology pictures that you start seeing what they have in common. For instance, this one right here is areolar connective tissue as well, but stained differently. This one's a little hard. This one is areolar connective tissue, and you can see the elastic fibers, and you can see the collagen fibers, and you can see the cells in there and a lot of space. So you need to be able to label the elastic and the collagen fibers and the fibroblasts or interstitial cells when you're looking at this. In addition, this is a good tissue to label, for instance, ground substance. This region right here, where it's neither fiber nor cell, is ground substance. Interestingly, this tissue also has reticular fibers in it, but they're really hard to be sure about labeling because they don't stain very well. So I want you to intellectually know that there are reticular fibers in there, but I don't generally make you label them. I make you label the things that are labeled right here. If you don't read your textbook about any other tissue, read about this one because it's so common in the body and there's so many questions you can ask about it. So this is the first one. So let's sort of build a whiteboard of the tissues that we're looking at. Okay, so what we were doing is we were looking at all of the adult connective tissues that are derived from mesenchymes, mesenchyme. And so we said, okay, there's connective tissue proper, right? There is supporting connective tissue, and there is fluid connective tissue. And then what we are doing right now is we just said, okay, with connective tissue proper, there's subdivisions. There is loose and there is dense. We're going to have 3 loose. We just looked at the first one, which is areolar. Check. And then the next one is going to be adipose. So let's go back and look at adipose. Okay, so adipose connective tissue is fat. It is how the body insulates and cushions, but it's also how it stores major energy reserves. And it's a really specialized type of connective tissue. And it's weird looking. Sorry to sort of break the rules so quickly after we formed them. It doesn't really look like it would be a connective tissue because the cells kind of end up looking like they're really close to one another, but I want to sort of show you how this tissue gets to look like it looks by sort of building it. So this is this is 200 magnification. Let's look at, okay, so with this tissue that you're seeing right now, if you get close enough, what happens is adipose kind of looks like chicken wire. I don't know if you guys have ever seen chicken wire or looking through a chain link fence, which is weird because you don't see what I just told you to expect in connective tissue, which is cells and fibers and matrix and all that kind of stuff. Because what happens with this tissue is basically formed from areolar, and it's generally in the same places that you find the areolar that you just looked at. Only what happens in this tissue is you had an areolar tissue with like fibroblasts and fibers in there, and then you started gaining weight. And as you started gaining weight, these adipose sites start to fill up and go through cell division. So let me kind of show you what you're looking at with this. So I want you to imagine for just a second what this tissue looked like at first, and imagine that there were these big pink collagen fibers, and then these much thinner purple elastic fibers running through, right? Okay, so that's what it did look like, and then there were fibroblasts every once in a while. But then what happened is the person actually started going through cell division, and as they start going through cell division, what happens is these adipocytes, there was one, and then I go through cell division and I make another one, and I make another one, and I make another one, and I make another one. And the fibroblasts are still there, but they get smashed between so many of these adipocytes that you really don't see them anymore, because this tissue just starts getting filled up with adipocytes. So what you are seeing is basically a loose areolar connective tissue plus boatloads of adipocyte cell division. So it doesn't look like it's got the fibers in there, but it does. And it doesn't look like a connective tissue or a loose one, but it is, because it's formed from the loose one. So what it has is mostly what you're seeing is these big cells called adipocytes. Let me show you one of them right here. So this is a big adipocyte, and you can see its nucleus staining at the side, and you can see another nucleus right there. Hold on, I drew it too badly. Okay, you can see another nucleus, because what you're seeing inside these cells is really this cell, which is called an adipocyte. The cell is basically one big cell that is so full of what we call a lipid vacuole that everything in the cell gets pushed to the side. So let's look at this one for a second. Okay. So this cell has a nucleus over on the side, and imagine that whatever little cytoplasm it has is pushed out here. And then really what you're seeing is just a great big lipid vacuole. And lipids don't stain with these water-based stains. So it looks empty. Don't all of these cells kind of look empty? Well, they're not. They're just full of fat, which is actually how you store fat. So each cell has what we call a signet ring shape, and the signet ring shape you see right here. You see this signet ring, which means like kind of like a high school ring, in which it's skinny on one side and then the nucleus or the stone is on the other side. And the cytoplasm and the nucleus are all pushed off to the side. So that's kind of why it looks like this. So let's look at it. So you can see when you get up really close, you can see the nucleus pushed off to the side like that. Okay. And then, so when you look at adipose, these are a bunch of little adipocytes undergoing cell division. See them? making more little adipocytes, and you can see one of them with the signet ring shape right there. I'll show you that one. So this is a super good one to look at, the signet ring shape. Here's the nucleus right here and the cytoplasm, and all of this is lipid vacuole, and this is making more fat right there, more fat cells. Okay, so the cells, as I'm sure you have noticed to most people's dismay, the cells don't lay down, the lipids don't lay down nice and smooth under the skin when they're laying down in the subcutaneous layer. What they do is they kind of form this lumpy little lobules, which you can see in this next picture right here. So they are lumpy, and then as the skin follows them, it looks lumpy, and that's what cellulite looks like. That's where that comes from. So where do you find adipose tissue? Well, you find it, of course, in the subcutaneous layer, right where the areolar connective tissue is. If you start to gain weight, which is damn near inevitable, what's going to happen is you're going to take the adipose sites that used to be in, let's see if I can find that, the adipocytes that used to be part of, see these little guys right here? Adipocytes right here, that used to be part of your loose areolar connective tissue, and then you're going to start going through cell division with these little buggers right here, and then they are actually going to start filling up. And so whereas right here, for instance, I can pinch and it's mostly loose connective tissue because you don't tend to hold a lot of fat right there. If I, for instance, pinched my thigh, that was at one point almost all loose areolar connective tissue, but now it's got quite a bit of adipose on it. Okay, so you find adipose wherever you find loose connective tissue in the subcutaneous layer, also called the hypodermis. You also find it around your kidneys, behind your eyeball, the surface of your heart, and in your joints. And it's either there for cushioning or insulation or energy reserve. Okay, and we talk about how adipose forms in physiology if you're interested. It's primarily under hormonal control and of course related to your metabolism. Okay, so that's adipose. And then let's do one more of the loose connective tissues, and then we will end this video. And the last loose connective tissue is just the reticular connective tissue. So let's go back to this one real quick. Oops, not that one. Let's go to the reticular connective tissue. Reticular connective tissue is a loose connective tissue, and really what this one isn't a super common tissue. It has those reticular fibers in it, so that's the fibers that you're seeing right here is reticular fibers. The reticular fibers are really forming this hairnet structure, and where is it? Oh, it's similar to areolar connective tissue, but it has only reticular fibers in the matrix. And this is the tissue that's primarily responsible for sort of making that loose internal framework of squishy organs like the spleen. Okay, and that is the loose connective tissues. Next video, we'll do the dense connective tissues.